Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Toby Keith dead at the age of 62 this morning. That's sad news. I am joined now by United States Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Good morning, Senator. Welcome back.
Good morning, Hugh. Though it is a sad morning, my condolences to Toby Keith's family and friends, and, of course, all of his many fans across the country, of which we have many in Arkansas.
I am sure you do. Senator, let's go to the meeting that was held last night. It is reported that Senator McConnell is recommending a no vote when the border bill comes up, or the security bill, whatever you want to call it, for a vote on Wednesday. How will you be voting and why?
Hugh, I plan to vote no on proceeding to the bill. I won't reveal what was said in private. Many senators have come out, though, and expressed their own opinion, and I share that opinion of many of them, is that wherever you stand on this bill, and I think most Republicans are opposed to in its current form, trying to move on to a 370-page bill in an area as highly technical and highly complex in immigration is unreasonable, and that we should not grant that motion to Chuck Schumer. Now, whether or not there's ever any agreement for amendments to try to improve this bill to the degree that it could be more supportable, we'll see after Wednesday. But if Chuck Schumer insists on trying to move to this bill on Wednesday, I'm confident that vote is going to fail. It may not even get 50 votes, Hugh, because a number of Democrats have announced their opposition to the bill, too.
Now, an open amendment process, if he agreed to that, does that require 60 votes at the end as well? Because, you know, I'm not afraid to try and fix something like strike. I got to tell you, Senator, $1.3 billion for ankle bracelets. What did you think of that when you first saw that?
Well, Hugh, so as a matter of Senate procedure, yes, there is typically 160 votes threshold to start debate on a bill and start the amendment process if Schumer ever allows amendments, which he normally doesn't. And then there's a 60-vote threshold on the back end to close debate and move on to the final vote on the bill. I have a lot of reservations about the immigration portions of the bill, and I've expressed some of those publicly. You've mentioned several of them on your show as well. We'll see, again, if there's enough amendments that are going to be ruled in order and that Schumer's going to allow a vote on that our conference thinks it can pass. But right now, I think that it's simply premature to be moving on to this bill. I will say this, though, and in addition to commending James Lankford for his work, even though it didn't produce the negotiation didn't produce a bill that I can support, I also want to commend Susan Collins on her work on the military portions of this bill. Whatever happens with this bill itself, I think all of your listeners should look carefully at the way the money invests in our military and invests in deterring China and the Western Pacific and supporting Israel and Ukraine as well with military aid. And that should really be a jumping off point for future negotiations, say, over our annual defense bill or whatever comes after this bill. So I do want to commend Susan Collins for her great work on the military parts of this bill. And again, James Lankford is a good man. He's a good friend and a good senator for Oklahoma. But what you had here was the Republicans trying to see what the Democrats were willing to do to secure our border, what their best offer was. And we see that this is their best offer, and it's not a very good offer, you.
No, it's a terrible offer. Yeah, it's so bad. No wall and $1.3 billion for ankle bracelets. 90-day hearings that they're all going to skip town on. I don't understand this. I do understand.
Another thing too, I want to point out too, because again, immigration is a highly technical, complex area of law, and liberals in Washington care deeply about it. They have an ideological commitment to open borders. So some of the provisions that may even seem beneficial to secure our border are often subject to sweeping loopholes that would allow the president or Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, to waive the provisions if they think it's, quote unquote, an emergency or, quote unquote, in the national interest. Remember, this is Alejandro Mayorkas, who may be impeached today for abusing his power and discretion. So the last thing we should be doing is empowering the administrative state with even more discretion and even more ways to abuse the law and let illegal migrants into this country.
Now, it is said, and I want to rebut this, that this is the best the Republicans will ever get. I don't believe that. I think you can get the Senate, hold the House, and elect a Republican president, and then reconciliation can build the wall or reprogramming and the defense budget. Reconciliation allows you to move with 50 votes. And people forget that Joe Biden passed his massive spending with 50 votes. So the Republicans don't have to settle for this. They do have to win, though. That's the bottom line. First, you got to win.
We do have to win. That's right. And I think we're on path to win because of President Biden's failed, disastrous border policies, because of runaway inflation, because of the humiliations that Joe Biden's inflicted on America repeatedly around the world. So I do think we're on path to win. And you are right that while we can't pass all of a bill like this or a much improved version of this bill using the fast-track budget procedures that President Biden used or that President Trump used for the tax bill, we can pass much of what we need. And also, too, Hugh, let's remember that Donald Trump had by and large, secured our border well before the pandemic hit in 2020 when we shut it down for public health reasons. And he was also on path by 2019 to building the wall. I wish we had gotten that done starting the first day of 2017. I'm confident we will start it the first day next year in January 2025. So the president will have the authority he needs. Congress can appropriate the money to exercise that authority to secure our border and stop this slow-motion invasion.
Senator, I believe that when you send signals, people hear them, and they don't give all their money to coyotes, and they don't send someone walking through the Darien Gap. But we haven't been sending signals. Do you believe that would-be migrants listen to what's going on in D.C. and take account of it?
No question, Hugh. It's one of the single biggest signals. Just look at the numbers. After Donald Trump was elected in November of 2016, crossings began to decline, even before he became president. Why? Because would-be migrants thought they wouldn't get in. Hugh, I remember being in Serbia in this winter of 2016 at the height of the migrant crisis there, and we saw people not just from, say, Libya or Syria, but Iraq and Afghanistan, places in those countries that are not at war. I remember vividly John McCain with a large group of senators through an interpreter talking to an Afghan elder who had brought, 20 or 25 members of his tribe. And the first word out of the tribal elder's mouth was all I needed to hear. I didn't need to hear any more translation. I could just walk away because the first word out of his mouth was Merkel. Because as you recall, a few months earlier, Angela Merkel, then the Chancellor of Germany, had basically said that they were going to have a welcoming culture in Germany. Anyone who got there could come. And that's what Joe Biden did throughout the campaign of 2020 and what he's done since then. Hugh, I'm also reminded of a story in the New York Times a few weeks ago about a migrant at our border from Ghana, of all places, in Western Africa. And he said that traditionally Ghanaians will go to Europe. They won't make the trek across the ocean to come to America. So why did he do it? He said, we chose America instead of Europe because it's easier to get in here. And you know what he did after he gave that interview to the New York Times, Hugh? I would bet you almost anything that he sent a text message or a DM back to all of his family and friends in Ghana and said, hey, I got in, you can too.
Yeah.
The day Donald Trump takes office is the day those migrants start sending text messages and DMs back saying, hey, I didn't get in, I'm stuck in Mexico, don't come.
That is, in a nutshell, the entire border debate. Senator, I want to turn to Politico. You and I both know it's way left. But the headline at the top of the page today, quote, is Anthony Blinken too nice to be Secretary of State? When you see a headline like this and a story like this, you've been around Washington a decade now, what's your immediate reaction when you see, is Anthony Blinken too nice to be Secretary of State leading Politico?
Well, I guess that's the liberals at Politico trying to excuse Secretary Blinken and Joe Biden's failures. I don't know if he's too nice or not. What he is incompetent and overwhelmed by events, just like Joe Biden is overwhelmed by events, events are riding him, not the other way around. Whether it's the war in Ukraine, the collapse in Afghanistan, Iran's continued campaign of terror, which did not stop with our relatively modest strikes last week. Secretary Blinken and especially Joe Biden simply cannot match what events are putting their way, and those events are coming in part because of their own weakness and failures.
No, I don't know if you listen to the commentary podcast. It's the one I listen to every day. Yesterday, John Podhoretz, no fan of the president, a fierce critic, serious guy on national security, says it's a remarkable thing that America can hit 85 targets at the same time in 3 different countries, and it ought to have sent a message to Iran that we can do that to you too. But clearly Iran didn't get the message, and J-Pod, as he goes by on X, commented on the podcast, it's because nobody said anything. It's neither Blinken nor Harris nor Lloyd Austin nor Tony Blinken. None of them can deliver a message, Senator.
And most of all, Joe Biden still has not, to my knowledge, said anything on camera since those strikes the other night. There was no address from the Oval Office or from anywhere else in the West Wing. He hasn't even given a speech about it while he's been out stumping for bucks in California and Nevada. But no one in this administration strikes fear into the hearts of the Ayatollahs. In fact, the Ayatollahs are laughing at us because, again, what did we do last week? We struck largely a bunch of empty warehouses or command and control facilities or radar sites. I mean, I guess that's better than nothing, but they can rebuild those things. To my knowledge, we didn't kill a single key leader from Iran, like when Donald Trump struck and killed Qasem Soleimani, in part Senator, because they telegraphed for 5 days.
Let me play for you Major General Patrick Ryder at the Pentagon yesterday, cut number 14.
Can you please tell us, did any Iranians die in the attacks on Friday?
So, Laura, as I understand it, CENTCOM is continuing to assess, but initial indications are we're not aware of any Iranians killed. But again, we'll continue to analyze and as we.
So, Senator, I'm pretty sure the Iranians will fight to the last Hezbollah, Houthi, and Hamas terrorist out there, but we're not going to deter them this way.
Yeah, he, as the jokes sometimes go, Iran is perfectly happy to fight America and Israel to the very last arrow. But until you start killing key Iranian leaders, the leaders of their shock forces in the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Quds Force, they will, again, continue to laugh and high-five. Iran has, for 30 years, has had a proxy strategy of using these Arab militias and rebels and terrorists to kill Americans and Israelis, and then they deny responsibility. When we only strike back at those terrorist proxies, we are simply validating their proxy strategy. This is not what Donald Trump did in 2020 when he killed Qasem Soleimani. It's not what Ronald Reagan did when he sank half of Iran's Navy in 1988. In both cases, Iran pulled in its horns because it was scared of America.
We know what works, and Joe Biden won't do it. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you. Always a pleasure. Don't